Jackson's corner kick. And Craig Moore with the equaliser. And Celtic couldn't handle Wood at the set piece. It's a brilliant header.
Hey, welcome back to Newcastle Fans TV. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening on Nova Radio, I'm delighted to be joined now by former Newcastle defender Craig Moore. Craig, how are you?
Sam, thanks very much for having us on. Look, I'm well considering everything that's happening throughout the world, trying to do the right things, mate. But today, as you can see, get out and get a little bit of fresh air.
For Newcastle in 2005. So when did you first hear of the interest for Newcastle?
It was very late on in the transfer window. I was playing, or my previous 6 months was in Borussia Mönchengladbach in Germany. But we kind of had regular discussions at that time with Graham Souness. I nearly signed at Blackburn when he was there. So with him being at Newcastle and maybe looking at the back end of the market to strengthen the squad, the opportunity came about for me to join Newcastle United.
I know he tried to sign you for Blackburn previously, as you say. Does it give a player confidence when a manager comes back in for a player that obviously he's got, the manager's gone on to, no disrespect to Blackburn, but bigger and better things? Does it give a player confidence when he tries to come and sign you again, this time for a bigger club?
Yeah, no, look, very much so. And you know, even nowadays when you're speaking to younger players looking to try and forge their way in their careers, it's always good to have discussions or the support from the coach, because normally he's the one that's going to select the team and pick the squads. So, look, it was fantastic to finally get the opportunity to work with Graham Souness. I knew a lot about Graham Souness in terms of his earlier days at Glasgow Rangers, and obviously, his history with Liverpool and his spells in Turkey. So, look, it was just a fantastic opportunity at the right. I'll come into the back end of my career when I was still hoping I had a good few years left. It was fantastic to join up with Graham Souness.
He's an interesting character, Souness, because obviously he came in to Newcastle at a kind of transitional time. Obviously, they'd sacked Sir Bobby Robson, which was obviously a fan favourite and an absolute legend of the game.
Sure.
There was a lot of characters in that dressing room that he kind of rubbed up the wrong way, the likes of Craig Bellamy and Laurent Robert. How did you find Souness? Was he kind of your kind of manager in terms of style, or
he was
harmony?
Look, the only issue that I had with Graham Souness, and it wasn't really an issue. I mean, look, he signed us as a player. I come in, and unfortunately, I got off to the worst possible start in terms of injuries. So I remember at times myself and Graham being in the gym and maybe having a chat about Australia and just a disappointment of him sort of like bringing us to the football club, and at the same time me not being fit and being able to put my hand up to play at that particular time, which was burning inside. And not that we ever had heated debates and all that sort of stuff, but I was trying to communicate in the best possible way to say that as much as he's disappointed, I'm really hurting as well, because I come to this football club because I wanted to play football. I wanted to play in the Premier League and I wanted to contribute. So, look, but he was a very experienced manager who'd been about the traps. I probably got him at the time where he's a little bit calmer than his earlier days.
Yeah, I think he said on Sky Sports the other day that he's mellowed down the years. So yeah, it's probably a good thing from what we've all heard about him. As you say, though, it was a kind of a frustrating time, because I remember you scored on your kind of debut in a friendly
friendly match.
Yeah,
Yedding, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Good memory.
But then, didn't you get injured pretty much straight after? I think it was still part of kind of the back end of the pre-season, and I believe we went and played a game in Ireland. We were in and we were out, and just right at the end of the match, I kind of just felt a little nick, just right in the insertion, right at the top of the hamstring. Not really thinking too much of the time, but when we returned to Newcastle, it was
it was still there, and so therefore normal go for scans and what have you. And unfortunately, I picked up a little tear. And what was a little tear? It's sort of like it hung about for ages. It niggled away, and like I says, unfortunately, I didn't get off to the best possible start with Newcastle because I was desperate to be involved, desperate to play, and kind of found myself watching, from the sidelines from a very early stage.
Yeah, I remember from obviously a fan's perspective, when we signed you, I thought, oh, brilliant. Because obviously most people would have known you from your time at Rangers. And then I thought, oh, bit of a bargain here. Someone to really solidify that defence, because I don't want to make you throw your ex-teammates under the bus, but we obviously had the likes of Boomsong and Bramble, and the defence there. Stephen Taylor, and then you had Ramage as well, just coming through, Peter Ramage.
Correct. Yeah.
So the defence with like the first two that I mentioned, it was a bit leaky to say the least at times. So so when we signed you, I thought, oh, brilliant, someone to really kind of shore up this defence, because there was still the foundations of a real strong team there. You had the likes of
very much so.
Shea Given, Shearer, Owen. There was obviously like a lot of big personalities in that dressing room. What was the atmosphere like in the dressing room? Who was the kind of dressing room leaders?
Obviously, Alan Shearer was a leader of that football club. But in terms of the dressing room, and then obviously you spill out into the cafeteria, and there's certainly different dynamics within the squad. But I found it to be a very very happy squad. Kieran Dyer was quite lively. He used to terrorise whoever he could on any particular day. But again, I think probably because his headspace, he was struggling also with the injuries. But like I said, I mean, Al was a fantastic leader, because he had this reputation and aura, and obviously well respected, rightly so, in Newcastle. He was a god up there, and certainly had the respect of everybody within the football club. But we had a good squad. We had a good mix of players. Like I said, defensively, you mentioned the central defenders. I mean, I had brief experience with John Alain Boomsong at Rangers as well, so I kind of knew a little bit about him. I knew Tails was a great younger player that certainly wore his heart on his sleeve and gave his all to the football club whenever he was out there. Big Titus was obviously a little bit unpredictable, and I think that's the kind of feeling that I got from a lot of the Newcastle fans, that hopefully I would have been able to potentially bring stability to a partnership. And like I said, it's just unfortunately it never got off the ground from the beginning. But like I said, I had a great experience within the squad. There was some live ones. Stevie Carr was another one that was quite lively and had been at the club for a bit. Then you had Damien Duff that come in. So we had the Irish boys, didn't we? Shea Given, people that have been there for a long time, and were certainly influential people at the football club.
So after picking up that injury early on, you didn't make your first start until March in an FA Cup game against Chelsea, which we lost.
Chelsea.
Yeah. But then at the end of that season, you had a really strong run in the starting 11. And the team coincidentally picked up a bit of form as well towards the back end of that season. And we had 2 derby wins that you played in, one at Borough and the other one at Sunderland, which, as we sit here now, it was 2000. It was 14 years to the day since that 4-1 Sunderland.
Wow. Not looking any older, are we?
No. So that was obviously Alan Shearer's final game in a Newcastle shirt. Obviously, the Sunderland derbies have a lofty reputation in the northeast of being pretty fiery. And so, what were your memories of that day? And obviously, we went 1-0 down in that game, and we turned it around. Battered them in the end. But, what do you remember from that day and the whole feeling about the game?
Look, again, derbies, whatever club you play at, they're always very special to the supporters. But obviously, Newcastle is a very spicy derby. I had the great experience of the Old Firm derbies up in Scotland. So, look, I was probably in a good space in terms of, I didn't feel that I was going to run into something that I hadn't experienced before. But what I did run into again was a very highly contested derby that meant so much to the supporters, and that last game of Al, because he picked up the knee injury, I believe, in that game, but he scored the penalty. Did Chopra score a couple?
Chopra got one, and I think it was in Zogbia, and then Albert Luque wrapped it up.
Alan Shearer says as he gets older, the feeling of scoring gets sweeter and sweeter, and that will taste very nice indeed. In his last Weir Time derby, Alan Shearer has put Newcastle United in.
Yeah. So in the end, it was pretty convincing, and again, there's nothing sweeter than getting one over your rivals and going out there and getting the great result. Like I said, I'd heard a lot about the derbies, and Middlesbrough being a little bit closer, but Sunderland is the one that always, when they're thereabouts, you want to get one over on Sunderland. And very fortunate that particular day. And as you touch on, we had a good finish to that season, my first season there, and I think we snuck a position through into Toto, didn't we? So we finished in 8th.
Yeah, Glenn Roeder would have taken over by then. Go back a little bit on Graham Souness and his departure. Did he kind of lose the dressing room, or was it the players still behind him, but it was just a case of one of them things, results weren't going his way and a change needed to be made?
Look, I mean, the people that are in the higher positions are paid to make decisions for the best interest of the football club. So they made the decisions that they felt were the right ones. Look, my time there under Graham, he was very unlucky. Even with Albert Luque that come in, I mean, he was injured for a spell. I mean, Michael Owen also injured. So look, in football, you need a lot of things to come together, and you need a little bit of luck. But we probably had a squad that. If everybody was able to put their hand up, then certainly Souness would have probably still been in a job, because you would have had a team that were able to perform very well week in, week out.
Glenn Roeder's style kind of differ from Graham's.
Again, I'd known of Glenn because he used to come up to Glasgow all the time with Paul Gascoigne back in the day. So I'd met Glenn before, and obviously I knew he was doing work over prior in the academy, and I always kind of got the feeling that he was. He was better with younger players. He probably, felt that he could forge a better relationship or bond with those younger players. I felt that although we finished, like I said, strongly within the season, I think it was probably, players and squad driven rather than a top-notch head coach coming in and making the world of difference. But look, what you end up having with any kind of coach is, you get a reaction because everyone knows that it's a clean slate. So everyone that, potentially players weren't playing prior have now got an opportunity, which should always be the case, because the way you train is hopefully going to allow the opportunities, but you have to be ready. And, Glenn come in and provided that environment. And like I says, when you get that different head coach coming in, it certainly does give you a lift. It's just whether or not that lift then can be consistent in terms of 2, 3, 4 seasons, because that's what clubs want. They want stability and progression, or whether or not you just get that little, spike for the 3 to 6 months, which is also something that you do see quite a lot in football.
We're always reliably informed that everyone that's come into contact with Gazza has a Gazza story. Do you have a Paul Gascoigne story to share?
Well, I've got plenty, but. Look, I mean, at the time, Gascoigne's a genius. So for me, when I think of Paul Gascoigne, I was fortunate enough to play for 2 years with him at Glasgow Rangers. I was fortunate enough to meet him while I was at Newcastle on a couple of occasions as well. And we all know he was a genius on the football field, and that was where he really felt at home. But look, I found him really, really positive and very good for the younger player. He was always somebody that wanted to. He was firm. He was hard. He wasn't. He wouldn't take liberties or give anybody a leg up just for the sake of it. You had to prove and show that you had quality. But once you had that, then Gazza was brilliant. I mean, we've all heard the crazy stories, but I think they're for different evenings. Let's say, it's like I enjoy talking about what he provided as a footballer, because I think he was an absolute genius. And I think it was a year at Rangers, that 8 in a row season. There was, one game, I think it was against Aberdeen. He scored a couple of goals, but he literally bossed the game and done what he wanted when he wanted. Such was his quality. He could get the ball and pass at 10 yards quite easily, but that was kind of too easy for him. He wanted to wait. He wanted to feel his opponent. He wanted to do a couple of twists and turns and embarrass his opponent first, and then he'll play that 10-yard pass that he could have done 10 seconds ago. Such was the quality of the man.
Your second season for Newcastle, you obviously started the season. You were an injury free, and forged a bit of a partnership with the likes of Bramble and Stephen Taylor and whatnot. It was again still a bit of a transitional period, because it was in a couple of years that were kind of, as I say, post Sir Bobby, but pre Mike Ashley, who's obviously in the news at the moment because we're on the verge of something massive. Have you been kind of following it from afar, and what have you made of Mike Ashley's tenure?
Look, I have, because one thing you've known about Newcastle under Mike Ashley is he's probably not invested into the football club the way that the supporters would have liked. But at the same time, you have to respect anybody that throws in the kind of money that these owners do. It's a very expensive hobby. The opportunity and Newcastle potentially quietly being on the market for a couple of years. Well, it hasn't been that quiet, has it? Because there's been a couple of major scoops about the potential sale of the football club that have fallen through. And look, I hope this time, fingers crossed, with the Saudi potential investors, that this one is legitimate, this one is real, and I think if it does go through, there's some fantastic and real exciting times ahead for the Geordies, for the Newcastle supporters. That you still have to be smart when you have such strength in the market in terms of financially. You still need to be very clever within the market. It's not about just going out and spending willy-nilly and we've got some money to burn. So I imagine if it does go through, you will see some changes. What that looks like in terms of recruitment, I have no idea at this particular moment in time, but there will certainly be some shrewd people that are involved, especially in the recruitment side of things.
Hopefully the exciting times are back and we kind of look forward as opposed to looking behind us in a relegation scrap every season. Just to kind of sum up your time at Newcastle, how do you kind of look back in general? Was it a kind of frustrating 2 years in your career because of injuries and whatnot, or was it just a great time, part of your career that you look back fondly on?
My time at the football club was a great time. I really, really enjoyed myself. I guess personally, when I think about myself in terms of being fit and being able to put my hand up week in, week out for the football club, I felt as if I let the club down in that way. So, when I was fit, I kind of played, and I think people could see the type of character and the type of player that I was. For me, it was extremely frustrating, but a really fantastic time at the football club. I loved everybody at the football club. I continue to follow and support the football club. I just feel as if probably Newcastle United were shortchanged a little bit on my time at the football club, which sometimes it happens with injuries and certain times within your career. I was fortunate enough after I'd left Newcastle, and I kind of would have liked to have stayed a little bit longer. It was certainly something I wanted to do, but business is brutal at times in the footballing world, and I certainly understood the financial side of the decision by the football club. I'd been about for long enough at that particular stage to completely understand the decision, and certainly understood that. And I managed to play another 2-3 seasons after that, where I managed to stay fit and healthy. So I managed to get some games under my belt, finish up for me on the highest possible level of game with a World Cup in South Africa in 2010.
Where you got on the score sheet against Croatia, if I remember rightly.
That was 2006.
Ah!
That was 2006. But yeah, no, like I says, I mean, I was fortunate enough where, you know, so I didn't play at loads of clubs, but I always think that, you know, the fans certainly, you know, respected and appreciated where I come from when I was fit and able to do a job. And I believe that I did, you know, do a job, but just unfortunately with Newcastle, it wasn't anywhere near as much as what, you know, myself personally and certainly the supporters would have liked to have seen. But like I said, sometimes these things happen in football. You know, there were other players that come to the football club that were, again, not their fault, but, you know, far more money outlaid on a transfer and salaries and kind of found themselves in a similar boat. So it's just unfortunate. It doesn't in any way sort of like change my thoughts of my time at the football club, because I got the great chance to play for Newcastle United, who are, you know, an unbelievable football club with a great set of supporters. And every year they, you know, there's that hope of going and winning silverware. And I'm very, very certain that if things go in the right direction with a potential takeover, that there's some really exciting times ahead for Newcastle United. And I'm sure some silverware will not be that far away as well. So hopefully that's the case there.
I mean, we're still in the FA Cup this season, but who knows when that's even going to be played, or I mean,
if it's going to be played.
Exactly. So, I mean, kind of just to wrap up, how are things over there, and what are you doing to keep yourself busy whilst I'm assuming you're on lockdown just as we are in the UK, and yeah, how are you keeping busy and what are you doing with yourself these days?
Finding myself doing more of these kind of things. You know, that's just a sign of the times. But look, you know, you still got to. We Australia's in the similar position. You know, it's like stay in house unless you need to pop out for the essentials. So look, we're trying to do the right thing for not only our family and friends, but for the broader community as well. We've all got a role to play to make sure that there's not as many people, hopefully, within the hospitals needing treatment, all that sort of stuff. So we've been quite lucky in Australia that it hasn't spiraled out of control, but we haven't gone into the colder months either. So it's still very important that people continue to do the right things. In the last couple of years, I've been exploring just consultancy within football in general. You know, I don't like to say that I'm just sort of like looking at players or coaches, but I'm looking at everything within football. So the potential buying and selling of football clubs, player representation, coach and administration, placement, legends football matches, exhibition matches, consultancy in general. I'm kind of leaving myself open and being flexible. So the last couple of years has been really good in terms of really cementing the networks that I had, but more importantly being able to grow those networks to hopefully be able to do more in the future.
Who's the hottest property in the A-League at the moment? Is there a kind of young up and coming, say if a club gets really mega rich pretty soon, what player should they be looking at to kind of... Look,
in Australia at this particular moment in time, I'll be brutally honest, we're not producing the type of player that that we've kind of seen over the last 20 years. And look, that might just be a generational thing as well, but the resilience, the determination, the ability to go overseas to Europe and adapt, but to be able to make those moves stick, we haven't seen that often. We end up getting players that are coming back to the safety net of our A-League, so to speak. Our most recent, more exciting type of player was Daniel Arzani, who signed with the City Group and was loaned out to Celtic, and unfortunately he picked up an ACL injury that put him sort of like on the back burner for 12-15 months. But still a young lad, played in the got some minutes in the 2018 World Cup, and the type of player that I think football fans in general like to see, because he has no fear. He expresses himself in a positive way and makes things happen. So he's probably the most exciting that we've seen for a good few years. But hopefully we can continue to produce better players. We need to produce better players. Our A-League product needs to improve, and with everything that's happening now, maybe a restart or a reboot. That might look something a little bit different to say what's finished here in Australia. We've already declared the minor premiers. We have a minor premiership that then potentially go into a final series. Look, highly unlikely the final series will go ahead as well. So Sydney FC will be crowned champions, and rightly so, this year. And hopefully, I'll be the first to let Newcastle United know when there's ever some great young talent coming through, and hopefully we can get it to Newcastle United, because it would be a wonderful opportunity. And if there were ways at forming and putting strategic partnerships in place, that'd be fantastic.
Craig, it's been an absolute privilege to talk to you today. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we can have you back on the channel again soon.
Sam, thanks very much for your time, and all the best to Newcastle United and all the supporters, and hopefully with this potential new takeover it goes well.